What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. It's finally here. Just under a month, we're going to have Blizzcon online. February 19th. It's already been confirmed we will be getting Overwatch 2 news. That's the good news. There may be some potential bad news at the same time. There's been quite a bit of circumstantial evidence to break down, but a big tip came out recently from Metro. We're going to break all that down as well as further discuss where we think Overwatch 2 is going to be headed, what to expect from the game altogether, and what to expect at BlizzCon. So if you've been a longtime fan of the channel, you'll know that some of the biggest news to pop in the community has been leaked by the streamer Metro. He's had a consistent source out of Blizzard for years at this point, predicting multiple BlizzCons before they happen. And his most recent leak is quite the colossal one. Bad news, guys. He says that the development of Overwatch 2 is going slow, that they're going to be delaying its release, and we can expect the game to be, quote, very far off, adding that it doesn't sound very good, the reports he's hearing. If that's true, that would be quite unfortunate, and perhaps a bit surprising considering that Activision had publicly hired on so many more developers to try to move this process along, but perhaps being stuck in lockdown in California has really halted production on things. To make matters worse, to that exact point, Deserto combed through the job listings for Overwatch, and as always, they're always looking to hire new people, but one was particularly concerning, where they're looking to hire a lead mission designer to develop the story campaign, missions, and PvE modes. That doesn't sound like the type of thing you want to hire if the game's mostly done, unless there's going to be a lot of extra DLC content after release. But of course, that's only half of what Overwatch 2 is supposed to be. That's something that I want to try to circle back to. With Overwatch 2, they're trying to redefine the sequel, and the best way that I've come to explain this is that it is a standalone game while also being an expansion. Metro goes on to say, alluding to BlizzCon, that there isn't much for them to show, and he thinks that they're going to show off a few new heroes perhaps, but not much else. Some other bits of evidence. The next strongest one is Jeff's wording in the most recent developer update, where he alluded to Overwatch 2, saying that he wanted to manage expectations because they still have a ways to go. A ways to go, kind of vague. I'll get more into that, but the last tip off to this, which I think is the weakest clue, but I'll throw it in anyway. The Art of Overwatch Volume 2 has been listed on Amazon and will be released in October of this year, and in the product description says that there will be a sneak peek at Overwatch 2, which seems to imply that the game wouldn't have been released yet by October. But I will remind everyone that the first Overwatch art book came out a full year after the normal release, and the terminology of an Amazon description, I don't think that means all too much. Now, all of this might come to a shock to you because, well, Metro previously had leaked that the game was in development scheduled to be out much earlier, and now we're getting reports that it's going to be far off. Which one is it? When Jeff Kaplan says that there's a ways to go on the game, I still think that could mean a beta this year. Due to the Metro leaks, maybe not, but I feel like most people in the community have forgotten how long of a beta the original Overwatch had. Now, granted, it was a brand new engine, brand new IP, so maybe the Overwatch 2 beta wouldn't need to be as long, but for Overwatch 1, the beta began at the end of October in 2015 and ended May of the next year. 6 months. I assume when Jeff Kaplan says we still have a ways to go, he's including the development time through the beta. But from our perspective, getting hands on the game or seeing the new stuff and all that begins when the beta begins, even though it's not a widespread release. As far as the consumer's concerned, then the game's out, even if it's not fully released. But as far as the devs are concerned, it's not out until its launch day, seeing as they'll have to be working hard to get it finished through that. But if we look into more of what Metro has said, he makes it seem like the content of the game isn't even done yet. Because if they don't have much to show for BlizzCon, maybe they haven't figured out all of the things that they've even worked on for the game. Now, this is all a real head scratcher, right? Because the content drought of Overwatch, whether they full on stopped producing content or even before that, the excuse for not really updating the seasonal events and stuff for years was that a big percentage of development time was geared towards Overwatch 2. Now, maybe you're like me and it's difficult for us to get a grasp how long development actually takes. It seems to fluctuate based on the studio. And really, like any creative endeavor, sometimes it feels like they can get an entire game done in 6 months. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, a game like Project Titan might be like over half a decade and then they fail it and scrap it, right? So there's quite a long variance on that working out. And then on top of that, there's quite a gray area with what state you're willing to release the game in. Whether it's Cyberpunk or Warcraft 3 Reforged, if you're willing to drop your quality standards low enough, well, you can get a game out. But I don't think Blizzard would be able to handle treating Overwatch 2 with the same kind of negligence that they did with Warcraft 3 Reforged. And especially when Jeff Kaplan's at the helm, the standards they're setting for Overwatch 2 is industry defining from my perspective. At the previous BlizzCon, when Jeff gets up on stage and says they want to redefine the sequel, I don't think that's just a marketing gimmick. I think they are planning on reclaiming their throne as an industry leader with this next game in more ways than one. So because of that, I could definitely see Overwatch delayed another year or two if they had to, in order to make sure they had it right. I think the team considers a lot riding on the success of this next game. And I do say next game and not expansion. I know that's really gray in a lot of people's perceptions because the things they physically showed us looks like an expansion. But the things that they're promising to be working on does, in my opinion, redefine the sequel, where there is an entire standalone game and an expansion. I think that's the best way to think of it. Overwatch 1 is getting expanded in a big way, but there's like an entire Diablo 3 worth of gameplay in the sequel itself. Whereas previously, an expansion would be more of the same. This is an entirely new game and an expansion at the same time. We haven't seen much of it, but that's the level of scope I'm thinking is going to be in Overwatch PvE, which, by the way, having played it at BlizzCon myself, I feel that content creators and the few BlizzCon attendees haven't done a really good job explaining how good that gameplay felt, perhaps because the depth of it wasn't really there. We got a cute little mission fighting a boss, but I can't stress enough how good the Overwatch mechanics feel in that type of scenario. All they have to sell me on is the depth that the game is going to bring. The replayability and RPG mechanics that, frankly, they've just done so many times. To me, it's almost a given that Blizzard is going to nail that part. The things I'm concerned about is the competitive stuff that we've struggled with for years with them. So this branches us off into two conversations. I want to talk a little bit more about Overwatch 2 and my expectations for the game and what I hope they do. But before we say that, let's tackle this idea of them not having much to show and the game being delayed. My question then is, what have they been working on all this time? Have they been focused more on the standalone Overwatch 2 stuff or the Overwatch 1 expansion? I think it's reasonable to expect a significant level of progress in one of these two, because what else have they been doing if they don't have anything to show? We'll be watching BlizzCon with bated breath, see if these new Metro leaks are accurate, and it's another disappointing BlizzCon with not a lot in it. But this is now where I want to branch off and ask, if they have been working on the expansion of Overwatch 1, as in all the extra PvP stuff, would it make more sense to them to delay all of that stuff until Overwatch 2, to release it together in one full package, or would they change gears, acknowledging that Overwatch 2 PvE and all the Diablo-style gameplay is delayed, but perhaps then create a new release schedule around Overwatch 1? It's an interesting question because the downside to them withholding longer than we expected the Overwatch 1 multiplayer expansion content, whether it be the push game mode, new heroes, graphical overhaul, any of that stuff, would be that the game would be in stasis without new content much longer than they anticipated. So many other competitor games out there are churning out content constantly. Can Overwatch 1 really survive another year with no new heroes when Valorant is popping them out every couple months? This is a tough question to ask because ideally, from the Activision publishing side, they would want to pack as much content into the sequel as possible to withhold it until they put it up for sale so that all the new players come back, get all the new features at once to sort of spike their sales at that time. Whereas stringing out improvements to the game we currently have isn't going to build up as much hype and probably less revenue for them. But on the other hand, losing momentum for your multiplayer game, which has already been on the decline, might also be a mistake. Because think about it. How the heck at BlizzCon are they going to announce like the worst news we could hear without any upside? It would be kind of a PR nightmare for Overwatch. Hey guys, the new game that everyone's waiting for, it's delayed. And by the way, the content drought is getting worse, extended as well. That would be a double whammy, smack in the face to their newest and brightest game. Meanwhile, the Overwatch League is dying on the vine. This would be like business suicide to me, like compounding bad decisions. Now, obviously, if the game's not ready, don't release it. But on the other hand, what have they been doing all this time? Okay, I demand to know, Jeff. I've bought a lot of loot boxes from you guys. Where's the content? Let's also remember that they sell Overwatch 1 as a box product now, but with the sequel coming out expanding on it at the same time, it's most of our assumptions that the PvP version of the game would go free to play at that time. But how would they go about this if the sequel is going to be delayed? I almost wonder if we'll get a free to play announcement early to try to mitigate some of this failure, as well as maybe a content plan to reinvigorate hype into the Overwatch 1 PvP to give it like an injection of life. Because at least from my perspective, I don't anticipate the Overwatch 1 expansion side of the sequel to be that significant, at least not in terms of what they would have to build or how much work it would take. I can understand making an entire campaign and PvE game like the next Borderlands but with Overwatch. Okay, fine, that's a full development cycle. But what are things that I actually expect for the PvP expansion? New maps, new modes, new heroes, and at this point I'm willing to bet a very large sum of money that Overwatch will be getting a Clash type system, which if you don't know is a League of Legends mode that lets you play in-game tournaments with friends at any rank. Overwatch 1 PvP would be saved if they just put that in. And what is that? It's more of a feature along the lines of the endorsement system, role queue. It's in that size of a project. That could hold me over till Overwatch 2. And if you don't know how it works, the beauty of the League of Legends Clash system is that no matter what rank you're at, you can play with teammates and get placed into little tournaments at that given rank. The benefit of this is that the gameplay is very immediate, whereas a ranked season feels like a long, arduous grind with not a lot of immediate feedback and some incredibly harsh rules up against teams in order to try to make it more accessible to play by yourself. But when there is a tournament system that has a set time period that everyone gets on in order to play, it gifts you that Overwatch experience that so many players have felt like the game just hasn't provided. And the fair thing about it is that you as a team are ranked together. So you could have a rainbow of ranks in your team, whereas the hybrid flex queue for normal ranked is incredibly punishing as well as meticulous with how specific you have to be. I mean, in GEM, you have to be 350 SR away to be able to queue with a friend. That's so annoying. So all in all, I fully expect that type of mode will be coming for Overwatch 2, as well as obviously more of the same that we've come to expect with the regular content, but I'm looking for more those types of systems. And the PvE game for Overwatch 2, that can come out when it's done. Totally fine. I have full faith that Team 4 is going to vastly outperform the expectations that are currently set for that project. I think the game's getting slept on. Blizzard doesn't do everything right, but the feel of playing Overwatch is unlike any other game. That's why we still play it to this day, 5 years later, because nothing is as good. You put that into an endlessly replayable RPG light system, and I think you have a massive hit and a game that's going to appeal to perhaps even more players than the original Overwatch did. But that's enough discussion for now. All that's left to do is wait for BlizzCon. How do you think Blizzard is going to handle the potential PR disaster of delaying the sequel another year or more, while we sit here playing Overwatch 1 being told that they couldn't work on Overwatch 1 because they were working on the sequel? Which one is it? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, please just leave it a like and click subscribe and the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. And hey, check out our Twitter where we tweet out dank memes like the one that you're seeing on screen. This one got you guys chattering. Upgrading our Twitter in the dank meme department is a New Year's resolution for me, kicking it off in 2021, doing it right. So click us a follow to discuss matters of the game and meme along with us. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.